go. Okay, here we go. It's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, IT247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, and iHeartRadio on all the platforms around the world. And I look forward to this because, Jane, the last time I saw you was in 2018 for High Strung. Remember that movie?
Oh, yes, of course I do. Yes.
It was me, you, and the dancer in West LA at the small office there. And I still show that photo of you with everybody. And they just Jane Seymour. I'm like, yeah, she's always been nice throughout the years, but that was the last time I got a chance to see you. So I had to remind you about that because I still show that photo. And I was in Santa Barbara last night. So I missed the screening earlier on, so I'm going to see it Wednesday.
Okay.
So you've never been in a bad movie, but let's talk about this one. So why is this movie unique?
Well, first I have to tell you, it's getting rave reviews. It's been playing in 160 cinemas in Australia and New Zealand this week. And the hardest reviewer out there has given it the major thumbs up. So the reason I did it is because it's a beautiful script and it deals with material that I think is incredibly important, since 1 in 2 of us over the age of 65 will have dementia or Alzheimer's, for which there is currently no cure. Plus, there's no help unless you're wealthy and you can afford, a special home or something. And even then it's devastating to the whole family. It's a crisis for every generation. So what's beautiful about this movie, I mean, there have been great movies like The Father and things like that. But what's different about this one is it takes you through the journey of an ordinary family, a family that's just about making it in Australia. And it's 3 generations of strong women. It's the grandmother, me, Ruby, who no one wants to admit has dementia and Alzheimer's, and how they try to help her. She inadvertently burns down her house, doesn't realize it, thinks her husband's still alive. Still nobody gets it, that there's something seriously wrong with her. They leave her at home and give her instructions, strict instructions. She ends up inadvertently killing the 2 family pets. But that sounds like a downer. But then the upside of it is that as the family come together to try to help her and realize how impossible it is to get help from the government or anywhere, and that Ruby is lost in this world of dementia getting worse and worse, they discover things that they can bring her back. So whether it's through music or it's through photographs or it's through art. And then what happens is, inadvertently, and there's a lot of laughs in this as well, believe it or not, she ends up solving all their kind of elephants in the room. I mean, there's issues that the mother has that nobody knew about, including the mother, that come out of Ruby's mouth in the middle of the night when she's sort of hallucinating about something. She develops an incredibly strong bond to her granddaughter, which she would never have had. The husband in the family, her son-in-law, who she doesn't like, has become a hoarder, and somehow she changes him. I mean, every member of the family is given the gift of happiness in their life because of Ruby's dementia. And so it's a very different and extraordinary film. It started out as a comedy, the original script, and then the director, Michael Budd, and the screenwriter, Paul Mahoney, decided it should be a very realistic depiction of really what goes on when somebody in the household has this. And Paul Mahoney is brilliant. He's been working in the world of dementia, in that world for 25 years. So everybody I know who's been touched by dementia or who runs a home or whatever, they have said this is must see for the entire family. It is a family movie. It really demystifies what's going on, and it shows this incredible love and what you can do and also what you can't do when you're living with dementia.
And I love that. I call them experienced seniors because they come from all different types. It's the body, sometimes the mind, but I found this out. If you put headphones on them and make them listen to the music, it just brings them back. And you can see that. You just mentioned that. And it's very, very true. A lot of my friends work with them, and I actually like to go visit them and play chess and stuff like that. And to see the look in their eye when someone is just carrying them, and you have to have patience, and a lot of people don't. And it is difficult, and it does affect everybody. But it's one of those things, if you do the right thing, magic can work.
Yes, they call it in Australia. There's an organization that's going to be benefiting from the sale of tickets for this globally called Spark of Life. And basically, it's the spark of life. And I know this because I made the documentary I'll Be Me about Glen Campbell and his final tour. I'm sure you have heard about that. And I was working with him for 3 or 4 years. I mean, long after we finished the documentary, even when he was in the home until pretty much the day he died, I was with him on the entire journey. So when I was playing this woman with dementia, people said, how did you get there? I had 2 uncles who died of it. I was very close to Glen and watching what that was like. But the thing that got me the most was when someone really goes deeply into dementia, they don't really know what's going on around them. They can't tell. They get very frustrated and angry and can be very aggressive because they just can't get it out. They can't figure it out. And they start seeing, things that frighten them that to us, we don't see, but to them are very real. It is really a caregiver's disease too, because the caregiver can die, as it happened with my aunt, 20 years, I think it was, before my uncle died, because she wouldn't let anyone help her. She thought she had to do it herself, all herself. And it is so debilitating. And I think this film is incredibly important because it shows people how it affects the entire family. Not just emotionally, not just financially, but health-wise. And at the same time, like you said, you can bring that spark of life back to the person. Even if it's for a moment or two, it's incredibly satisfying for them and for anyone around. And with Glenn, of course, he was able to not know where the bathroom was in his own bedroom, but then go out and live, do like 160 concerts or something. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, there was a lady called Cynthia Harrison. She back in 2013-14 called Silver Tsunami. It was a documentary that I will never forget, where it's the first time in the history of mankind where the aging population, us younger people, are taking care of everybody who's experienced senior now. And when it comes to music, I saw the documentary about Glenn. Excellent. And yes, again, going back to music is what brings you back to life. And the other thing is, you do have to have patience when it comes to that, because they are frustrated inside. But and it's one of my pet peeves, you got to have patience. You have to show compassion and empathy when it comes to that, because you just don't know. And one of those things like that, even with Glenn, goes back to when he was with the Worldwide Wrecking Crew, one of the first session players of that. And about the history. And I'm so glad that you did that, because it's one of the best documentaries out there on that, of what things could happen.
Exactly. And I was there with him, and I've never forgotten how painful. I think we were in Chicago to a very big fundraiser for Alzheimer's. And I was sitting at the table right, below the stage, and he was doing fine. And then he started playing the same song again immediately. And his daughter, who was there on the banjo, and the rest of his family who were in the band with him, we're trying to say, no, Dad, we're doing something else. No. And you get really angry. No. And then the only way they could change him was by changing all the chords and all of them playing the other song, so that he then, his mind went, oh, well, we're doing that. So, a lot of things you can't correct them. You can't tell them if a member of the family has died, 10 years ago, and they think that they're going to come visit. And our film really deals with all of that. The granddaughter becomes so upset about stuff, and what's a lie and what's a white lie, and it's very moving. I went to watch it again yesterday. It was the first time I'd seen it with a major audience, and I didn't realize how many laughs there were in it. People were howling with laughter at some of it, howling, and then tears dripping down. And unfortunately, I had to hit the red carpet afterwards, and I had, bleary eyes, and like I was going, whoa, at my own film. I'm like, really, Jane? I think you know the plot. But I am so excited that this little film is getting the attention it's getting. And my hope and prayer is that everyone sees it, children, the people in the middle, as you call the sandwich culture, they're trying to have a career, they're trying to raise their kids, trying to have enough money to put the kids through school, and then grandma or grandpa. And now what do? Your parents raised you, they protected you. You can't leave them high and dry. What do you do? So it's very much a family dilemma, a family movie, and a family reality. You know, it's not something you can just say, oh, this is going to happen to me, because the statistics prove 1 in 2 will have it, 1 in 2 of us, and at the moment, absolutely no cure. And it doesn't, it's not a question of just doing Sudoku or something. My uncle was one of the most famous professors in the world, and he got Alzheimer's, full-blown Alzheimer's. You couldn't have had a better brain than him, that's for sure. So it hits everybody.
Well, and that's why I call them experienced seniors, because I've known some people who are NASA scientists and things like that. It doesn't matter, but you can bring them back. And again, you can never emphasize having enough patience. That's really what it comes down to. And, you talked about Australia. Australia is my favorite country. I would always go to Newcastle to get away. I actually watched the Oscars there in the pub in Newcastle one morning at 6 a.m, and I never forgot that.
Well, it was beautiful to make in Australia. And the interesting thing, too, is that during COVID, when everyone I knew was like hunkering down and not even leaving their front door, I went to Australia. I was the only foreigner allowed into Australia. So Owen Glenn, who funded this, must know someone in the government, because I was allowed in. We were able to make this movie. I did 2 weeks alone in a room in quarantine, which was crazy. But we did all our rehearsals on Zoom. And then when I arrived on the set, we just shot it as careful as we could. Nobody got COVID. And we came up with this beautiful, beautiful movie.
Talk about, was last night, yesterday, was that the first time you had been in a movie theater and see it with an audience?
No, actually, I saw it in Australia, and it was fantastic there too, and they loved it. The difference was that for some reason, the Santa Barbara crowd really saw the humor in a much bigger way, and they weren't afraid to laugh out loud, even while they were weeping. So it was really interesting. And we had a Q&A afterwards, and everyone stayed. No one wanted to leave. People were stopping me in the aisles and going on. And people who experienced it just did not know how I managed to play the character. And actually, I was talking to my son last night, who saw it. He hasn't seen it on the big screen, but he's seen it on a laptop. And he said, Mom, it's really hard for me to watch, because it's you, and this is my mom. And it's so believable that, I feel like I'm watching my own mom do this. It's so I'm very proud of it. And I don't often get those kind of roles, especially when you're in your 70s. Usually when you're 40, that's sort of the cutoff date, the expiring date for actresses. And mercifully, that's not been the case for me. And I have a series launching on Acorn called Harry Wild, completely different, but again, probably one of the best things I've ever done. That comes out April 4th, playing an English professor who becomes a detective. So, I'll be doing publicity for that as well, because that's going to come out everywhere all over the world. But I've just, had the most amazing time recently. Those two have come out, Be Positive, which I did. And I'm just coming from a place of great gratitude that I can actually show the world that women of a certain age, not only have value, but might be useful.
Well, the good thing about that is, one, you're Jane Seymour. And like I said at the beginning, you've never done a bad movie that I've ever seen. So there's that. And the other thing is, how are you feeling about these roles that are coming in now, script-wise? What are you seeing the difference now that you might have seen 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Well, I would never, and I've never seen a series starring a woman in her 70s playing an action woman who uses her brain and her knowledge of English literature to solve crimes alongside her young 15-year-old black sidekick, who is off the streets and in Dublin and has not had an education. And while they're doing this together, she's actually educating him about Shakespeare and Bronte and giving him English literature, whilst he's teaching her, how to find a guy who knows a guy who can pick a lock, or, find a stun gun or whatever it is she needs. So it's really cool. It's the two cultures, and of course she turns this young kid onto, the relatability of great literature, whilst, stopping serial murders.
Last two questions. So I always tell a lot of my young actor friends, I've never been that actor. I've never been that screenwriter. I've never been that director, which is why everybody tells me everything. What would you say to get younger audience to look at your film work? What a couple of films would you recommend to them to study and why?
Gosh, that would be really, really hard one. Well, I think Somewhere in Time is one of the quintessential great romances. And again, it was a tiny little movie that we weren't even allowed to publicize when it came out. It came out at the same time as the Blues Brothers, and Universal didn't even want anyone to know it existed. And it, to this day, is considered one of the half dozen greatest romance movies.
It is one of the most iconic films of all time. And I remember I was running a video store. Every couple came in. All the girls wanted to see that movie. And it's still iconic till this day. I remember doing publicity on that.
Well, General Colin Powell, who I met a number of years ago, when he saw me, literally went nuts. He said he's watched it 35 times. It's his favorite movie. He just keeps watching it over and over again. I'm like, okay, so it is not a chick flick, okay? If one of the most honored military men in America is obsessed with this thing. So that would be one. And also what's beautiful about that is, the present day images, the photography was brilliant, the costumes were great. And then going back in time, you really feel you've walked into an impressionist painting. And the late Christopher Reeve and I were very close, and you can just see the love between us. It's there on screen. What else would I recommend seeing? It's really hard, I mean, I personally think War and Remembrance was an extraordinary piece. I mean, it was 32 hours long, so most people probably haven't seen it. But, now that we're watching what's going on in the world right now, that's what was happening there. It's like a replay. It's frightening. And I was surrounded by real survivors of the Holocaust when I did that. I think in terms of comedy, I don't think it gets better than Wedding Crashers.
That was also one of the last times they've interviewed you in the roundtables at the Four Seasons. I still see Vince Vaughn because I work for Vince's mom, Shay Vaughn, on the Woman on TV network.
All right. Well, I mean, I think if you're going to break into comedy, with Vince and Owen at their best, I mean, that was a bit of magic. I just did Kaminsky Method. I think that's extraordinary to see Alan Arkin's work and Michael Douglas, and Chuck Lorre's writing is genius. The guy is the best, probably right up one of the best writers of comedy ever. And I think what's interesting about really great comedy is it's played so straight, so subtle. It's all in the writing. It's a different way from the way comedy used to be played. And trying to think. I mean, I've done so many things that I loved. I think
you got to go back to Dr. Quinn too, obviously.
Dr. Quinn. How can I forget Dr. Quinn? Well, Dr. Quinn, I think, is remarkable. Again, it's all about the writing. So if I was to approach a young filmmaker, I would say write your own material or find a really good writer and work with them on your idea and create your own material, because that's the way to do something unique and different. And Dr. Quinn is timeless because it takes place in the 1870s, but every issue that's dealt with in Dr. Quinn is an issue in today's newspaper. Every one of them. There's nothing that we discuss then that isn't still happening. From racism to lack of understanding or compassion for different beliefs, to poisoning the water with mercury to get gold, to choices and whether or not you want to have medicine or you want to believe in God to cure you. The blended family, the oppression of the native people. I mean, and on and on and on. And sadly, none of it's changed. Really.
Exactly. Well, Jane, I want to thank you so much for everything. It's good seeing you. I'm sorry I missed you in Santa Barbara, but I guarantee you, I will not miss you again because, one, you're Jane Seymour. So with that, I'm Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next time.